The biggest bottleneck in AI right now isn't chips.
It isn't software.
It's electricity. See, the demand for power from AI is growing at a scale that's just completely rewriting a century of energy economics. And you gotta understand, this is a physical problem, not a digital one.
A single AI campus today can consume somewhere between 1 and 5 gigawatts of power. To put that in perspective, that's as much power as the entire city of Seattle. Yeah, the residential consumption of a major American city, all compressed into just a few buildings. Now here's the thing. Most investors, well, they see utilities as boring, defensive stocks, right? Safe but sleepy. But what if I told you the companies sitting smack in the center of the AI arms race aren't just Nvidia or the hyperscalers, your Googles, Amazons, Microsofts? What if I told you they're the electric utilities? And most of the market has completely, totally missed this story. So stick with me here, because this next part really matters. By the end of this, you're going to understand a business model so completely counterintuitive that the more utility spends, the more it earns. And you'll see exactly why AI is the single greatest expansion event in the entire history of the US power industry.
All right, let's get into it. To really grasp how we got here, you have to appreciate the sheer physical scale of this shift. We're not just talking about plugging in a few more servers, we're talking about a completely different kind of server altogether.
So, in the old world of cloud computing, right, a standard server rack pulled maybe 10 to 15 kilowatts of power, manageable. An AI server rack, though, packed to the gills with power-hungry GPUs, that thing consumes anywhere from 100 to 120 kilowatts. That is a full order of magnitude more power density. You can't just plug these things into the wall. They need entirely new electrical substations, sophisticated liquid cooling systems just to stop them from, literally melting down. This is a fundamental change in the actual physics of a data center.
So when a tech giant comes to a utility and asks them to power a campus with tens of thousands of these racks, what they're really asking for is an entire city's worth of power, and they want it online in 2 or 3 years. This just completely shatters a grid planning framework that was built to work over decades, not quarters. It's like asking your local plumber to build the entire water system for San Francisco, and oh, by the way, do it before your next earnings call. But before we can understand why these tech giants are doing increasingly desperate things to get power, we need to understand how the US electricity market actually works. And I promise you, it's nothing like you think. Okay, this next part, this is the core of the entire thesis. We're about to look under the hood of the utility sector and find the secret engine that drives their profits. And here's a hint. It has almost nothing to do with how much electricity they sell.
So the US market really has two main players, and a water analogy works perfectly here. On one side, you have your investor-owned utilities, or IOUs. Think of them as the municipal water company. They own the reservoir, the power plants, and they own all the pipes that deliver water to your house. They're basically regulated monopolies. Then on the other side, you've got your independent power producers, or IPPs. They're like a bottled water factory. They only own the production facility, and they have to compete to sell their product on the open market. Now, what's really interesting is how that first group, the IOUs, actually make their money.
And here it is, maybe the most counterintuitive fact in this whole story. IOUs do not make money by selling more electricity. They make money by building things. It works like this. Every single dollar an IOU spends on capital expenditures, a new power plant, a substation, new transmission lines, all of it gets added to this big pot of assets called their rate base. Then state regulators come in and guarantee them a return on equity, usually somewhere between 9 and 11% on that entire rate base, year in, year out. So here's the thing you have to remember. The more they build, the more they earn. And AI, with its just insatiable demand for new infrastructure, well, it's the ultimate rate-based expansion engine.
Okay, but not all markets are created equal. You've basically got 3 main personalities in the US grid. First, there's PJM, up in the Northeast. Think of it like a crowded highway. It's huge, but it's totally congested. And getting a permit to build a new on-ramp can take, I kid you not, 7 years. Then you have ERCOT in Texas. That's the Wild West. It's completely disconnected from the rest of the country, so there's zero federal oversight. It's fast and loose, but it's also prone to some pretty catastrophic failures. And finally, you have the South. This is like a slow but reliable toll road. It's controlled by just a handful of big utilities, so there's only one table to negotiate at. It's predictable, but you move at their pace. So, if utilities make money by building things, and AI needs more things built than at any point in history, yeah, you can probably see where this is going.
You know how in real estate the rule is location, location, location? Well, in the world of AI infrastructure, that rule has been totally rewritten. Now it's power, power, power. And this has triggered a massive geographic shift, a great migration of compute where the only thing that matters anymore is speed to power. I mean, getting a gigawatt campus online just 1 year ahead of schedule is worth billions in revenue. That dwarfs pretty much any other cost you can think of.
And this chart just illustrates the shift perfectly. Northern Virginia, for decades, the king of the internet, is now a victim of its own success. It's basically a traffic jam. The grid is full. So, where is this new wave of AI development going? It's moving to the countryside. See, AI model training doesn't need to be next to a city. It's a closed industrial process. So it's migrating to these frontier markets. The winners? Well, you've got Texas, because of ERCOT speed and lack of regulation. Despite its tail risks, those rare but catastrophic events like major winter blackouts. Then you have the Midwest, states like Ohio and Indiana that have all this massive, stranded grid capacity just sitting there, left over from deindustrialization. And then there's a dark horse, the Southeast, thanks to new nuclear power coming online in Georgia. That's offering massive, carbon-free baseload power, consistent 24/7 electricity that never sleeps.
But here's what almost nobody's talking about. This is only the first migration. See, training an AI model happens once, in a huge remote facility. But using that AI, what the industry calls inference, that happens millions of times a second, and it has to be fast. Every single time you ask a chatbot a question, that's inference. And that requires data centers to be close to you, the end user, in major cities to reduce the lag. So a second migration is coming, one that pushes compute back towards the metro areas. For an investor, the holy grail is finding an IO2 that controls territory in both places, in the remote hinterlands for training and on the periphery of major cities for this coming inference wave. They get to win twice.
Okay, so you've got the capital, you've got the land, you've got the big AI contract, you're ready to build, right? Well, not so fast. This isn't some simple gold rush. There are some very real physical and logistical moats that I think Wall Street is severely underpricing right now, and these moats are what separate the real players from the pretenders.
Constraint number 1, transformers. You literally cannot connect a gigawatt-scale campus to the grid without a massive high-voltage transformer. And right now, the global supply chain for them is completely broken. Lead times have ballooned from less than a year to almost 3 years. The special steel they're made from, grain-oriented electrical steel, is only produced by a handful of companies in the world. So, what's the workaround? What are the smart players doing? They are buying up old, shuttered industrial sites. Think old coal plants, paper mills. Not for the real estate, but for the dusty, rust-covered transformer sitting in the corner that's still connected to the grid. Buying that existing interconnection, that is the single most valuable asset in this entire game.
Constraint number 2 is water. These massive AI factories get incredibly hot. They're often cooled by giant water towers that consume millions of gallons a day, as much as a small town. And this is rapidly becoming a political landmine, especially in drought-prone states like Arizona and Texas. Look, a higher utility bill is one thing, but a local headline that reads, "Tech giant is drinking our town's water dry during a heat wave," that's a PR nightmare that can kill a project overnight. And this puts a huge hidden premium on utilities operating in water-rich regions, like near the Great Lakes or in the Southeast.
And the third constraint, well, it's the grid itself. The process for getting approval to even connect to the grid is called the interconnection queue, and it has become hopelessly clogged. For years, financial speculators filed for these so-called ghost projects with absolutely no intention of building them, just to hold a valuable place in line at a low cost. At its peak, in a market like PJM, the wait time for a real project was 7 years. Think about that. You could have your land, your permits, your transformers all ready to go, and still be trapped in bureaucratic purgatory for the better part of a decade. Now, reforms are slowly starting to clear the traffic, but a massive bottleneck remains.
So, you've sourced your transformers, you've secured your water rights, and you have a plan to navigate the grid connection. But there is one final variable, and it might be the most important one of all: the regulators. We're talking about the State Public Utility Commissions, or PUCs. These are the people who decide who gets to build what, and, crucially, who pays for it. Let me be clear, a friendly PUC is worth more to an investor than the biggest tech contract you could ever sign.
And this is where we find the regulatory cheat code. There's a recent federal rule that allows a utility that's retiring an old power plant, usually a coal plant, to transfer its existing grid connection rights directly to a new user at that same site. This is a golden ticket. It allows an AI developer to completely bypass that 7-year queue and plug directly into the grid. So those IOUs with a large portfolio of aging coal plants, they're not just holding on to old assets, they are holding the single scarcest, most valuable resource in the entire US power market, pre-approved grid access with zero wait time.
Okay, we've covered the physics, the economics, the geography, and all the constraints. Now, let's pull it all together into a coherent thesis, a brand new playbook for how to look at this supposedly boring sector.
So, here it is in brief. First, the core profit logic. IOU profit equals CAPEX, not kilowatt hours. The more they build for AI, the more they earn. Simple. Second, geography is destiny. The risk-reward for a utility in Texas is completely different than one in Ohio or Georgia. Third, the dual migration. The real winners are going to be the ones who serve both the current training wave out in the countryside and the coming inference wave near the cities. Fourth, the physical moats are real. Transformers, water, and grid queues, these create durable, hard-to-replicate competitive advantages. And finally, the regulatory moats, especially those CIR transfers, they're the ultimate gatekeepers to growth. This is the new framework.
So as this new industrial revolution unfolds, maybe we've been asking the wrong question all along. With AI's insatiable demand for power just rewriting a century of energy economics, the real question isn't which tech company is going to win, but which power company is ready to build the new grid.
Markets reward the people who do the work before the crowd shows up. You just did the work. See you in the next one.